Yeah, his third day, and he has done an amazing job telling stories, different stories that he has shared this time with many other kids, but we will get to hear something special. So I want you to welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you. Like Nancy said, my name is Alan Hirsch. I'm from Seattle. Anybody here ever been to Seattle? Seattle is a city on the west coast of North America, almost to Canada. We live in a very rainy place. It rains a lot there, which makes it so we have huge trees. Our trees are giant trees called Douglas fir trees and cedar trees. Some of the biggest trees in the world live there. And we also have a body of water that's very unusual on the earth. You know about rivers and lakes and oceans. We have a sound. Do you know about the sound? A sound is a body of salt water that's connected to the ocean, but it's mostly surrounded by land, so it's calmer. So it's like having an ocean without all the big waves. We have little waves. And we have seals and sea lions and killer whales. They just swim by the city every day. You can go see them almost any time. And there's many islands and lots of people. And we also have some of the biggest eating fish in the world called salmon. Have you eaten salmon? Yeah? I don't know if it came from Seattle or not, but they also come from Alaska. So it's a very fun place to live. And I'm a professional storyteller and entertainer. I do programs for children and students of all ages. I've been doing it for a long, long time. I have many, many stories that I love to tell. And today I'm going to tell you some stories that I have not told to anyone else in your school. I've saved them for you. And they're not just your typical stories. These are stories that you are going to have to solve. At the end of the story, there is a question. So these stories are kind of like a riddle. Okay? And at the end of the story, I'll let you talk a little bit to each other so you can try to figure it out together, and then we'll see if we can come up with the answer, okay? Here we go. A long time ago, there was a farmer. He had a daughter. And his daughter wanted to go to the dance. There was a big dance going to happen in town, and she really wanted to go. But she couldn't decide which boy to go with. 2 different boys had asked her to the dance, and she couldn't decide. Her friend said, "Oh, you should go with this one." And her other friend said, "Oh, you should go with that one." But she just couldn't decide. So she asked her father. She said, "Father, what am I to do? There's 2 boys that want to take me to the dance. I can't decide." And he said to her, "Well, what you can do is have these boys each bring a horse tomorrow, and we'll have a horse race to decide." So she told both boys to make sure they came at a certain time in the morning, and they could have a horse race. So the next morning, they showed up with their horses. They listened to her father as he explained the rules of the race. He said, "I want you to ride out to the lake. And whoever gets back, whoever horse gets here last will win the race." So will you explain that again, they said. Okay, I'll try again. He said, "I want you to have a horse race. I want you to ride out to the lake and back. And whoever horse gets here last wins the race." They just shook their heads. They didn't know what he was talking about. "What do you mean gets here last? What kind of a race is that we have to be last?" And so they rode out to the lake very slowly, trying to be last. They went very slowly. And when they got to the lake, they got off their horses, and they gave their horses a drink of water, and they were standing there talking. And all of a sudden, they jumped back on the horses, and they went as fast as they possibly could go. Why? Whoever horse gets there last wins the race. Why would they go fast? You want to discuss it a little bit? Discuss it with your friends and neighbors? Why would they get on the horse and go as fast as they possibly could go? Okay, let's see what people are thinking. What's your idea? Hold on, everybody. Hold on.
That when they got back on the horses, they got on the other guy's horse, so...
That's the answer. They got on each other's horse. See? They weren't on their own horse. They were on the other person's horse, so whoever wins the race I tell you these stories in hopes that just maybe you will tell them to somebody else. Okay? You tell a story in your own words. You don't have to copy exactly the way I tell it. But the same story is told in many different ways. So you can tell that to your cousin or to your parents and see if they get the answer. Because now you know the answer, don't you? So that makes it fun to tell somebody that kind of story. Okay, I'm going to tell you another one. I might have told this to some of the other students, but if not, it's okay. I learned this when I was about 13 or 14 years old. I didn't even know it was a story. I thought it was a joke. And I found that it was a story that you have to solve. I like that even more. There were two archaeologists digging inside a pyramid, and they found a secret door that no one had ever found before. And when they pried it open, a rush of cold air hit them in the face. They went down the corridor into this chamber, and using their flashlights, they were looking around and they found this huge block of ice. 6 meters long, 5 meters wide, 4 meters tall, big block of ice. And they looked at it with their flashlights, and they could tell there was something inside that block of ice. They didn't know what it was. They started chipping away with little hammers and chisels to try to look inside that ice. And they got a little way in, and one man said, "You know, I think there's bodies in there. I can see human bodies." And they kept chipping away a little bit more. And one said, "Well, they don't have any clothes on." And they kept chipping away, and one said, "There's a woman in there." And they kept chipping away, and one said, "There's a man in there." And they kept chipping away, and one said, "Stop chipping. I know who these people are." The other one said, "Who?" And he said, "It's Adam and Eve." Adam and Eve said, "How do you know that?" How did he know that it was Adam and Eve? They didn't have tattoos with their names on them. And they didn't have name tags. How did they know? Okay, I'll give you about 30 seconds to discuss and collaborate. Hold on. You already know the answer? Did somebody tell you? Did somebody tell you?
No, the translation.
Okay, let's hear. Oh, teacher told you?
The translation. No, we know the answer, but that's
You know the answer? What's the answer? Somebody tell us.
Because one of the bodies didn't have a rib.
Oh, because one of the bodies didn't have a rib. That's a good answer, but not the
because of the
answer.
belly button.
They didn't have belly buttons. They weren't born, they were made. Okay, that's a very easy one. Okay, now this next one, does anybody here drive a car? How old do you have to be to drive a car here in Colombia? Okay, well you need to know this story in order to drive a car. One day, you were at school and the teacher told you, tomorrow we're having a test. And if you don't come here for the test, you have to do the whole year over again. That's not a very good idea. You're not going to miss the test, right? So you go home in your car, you drive all the way home, and you get up early the next morning. You're going to get there early. You're not going to miss this test. And as you're driving down the road, bam! You get a flat tire. You look at your watch. You still have 15 minutes. You better change the tire. So you jump out of the car, you open up the trunk, you get the tools out, you jack up the car way up into the air, you take off the lug nuts, they're the nuts that hold the wheel on, and you pull the flat tire off, you throw it in the trunk, you put the spare tire on there, and you look. And the lug nuts that hold the wheel on are gone. I don't know where they went. Maybe they rolled down into the sewer. I have no idea, but they're just gone. You look at your watch, you still have 10 minutes. You got plenty of time to get there. You don't want to do a whole year over again. 10 more minutes. You look around and this little kid comes by on their bicycle. And they stop and they say, "What's wrong?" And you tell them you lost the nuts for the wheel, and they tell you what to do. And they ride away. What are you going to do to fix your car? You're far away from stores. You have to think of something quick, or you have to do the whole year over again. Start all over. Want to talk to each other a little bit? Go ahead. Confer, collaborate. Oh, we got somebody that has an answer. Let's see what their answer is. What do you think? So you take one nut off each wheel. How many people got that answer? Well, everybody else has to do the year over. Very good. The answer is to take one of the nuts off each of the other wheels and put it on the new one, so each one only has 3 instead of 4, and that's okay. It'll work. Okay? Everybody understand? Okay, now I have a longer one for you. This is a longer one, and it's based on a true story that happened in the United States back in the 1800s during the period of slavery. You know about the African American slavery that happened? Okay. There was a man, an African man, who worked on a plantation. He was a slave. His name was Betcha John. Betcha John liked to make bets with people, and he never lost. Every bet he made, he won. He'd say things like, I bet I can climb a tree faster than you. I bet I can pick more cotton than you. I bet I can swim across the river faster than you. And he won every bet. Each time he won a little bit of money, and he was saving it for something. Well, there was one person on that plantation that wanted to beat him at a bet, and that was the slave master. The slave master whipped people and beat them to get more work out of them. And he had bet Betcha John at least twice, maybe even 3 times, and lost. He wanted to beat Betcha John so bad, and Betcha John knew that. And one day he came up to the slave master and he said, Master, I've got a bet for you. The slave master, what kind of bet? And Betcha John said, I bet I can take a chicken egg and throw it all the way across your living room without breaking it. The slave master said, you think so, huh? Come on in the house. They went in the house and they looked at his living room, and on one side was a fireplace, and on the top was a mantle. There were a couple of candles on the mantle, and a couple of little pictures, and some knickknacks and statues and things. And he said, you think you can throw an egg all the way across the room and land it up there? Betcha John said, I can. The slave master said, how much you going to bet me? Now Betcha John took out his little pouch and opened it up, and he dumped the money on the table, and he counted it out. And he said, I've got $50. $50, said the slave master. That's a lot of money. You could buy your freedom for that, and your wife's freedom too. Betcha John said, yeah, but I need some spending money. I want to make this bet. The slave master said, you wait right here. The slave master went in the kitchen. When he came back, he had a basket full of eggs. And he set it on the table. He said, I think you're going to lose this bet. You can't throw eggs without breaking them. He said, I'll put $50 on the table. $100 is on the table. And then the slave master said, you can use all these eggs. Go ahead. See if you can do it. So Betcha John took the first egg and he threw it. Splat. It broke. The egg started dripping down the side of the mantle. He took the second egg. Splat. It broke too. It started dripping on one of the pictures. One by one, he threw the whole basket full of eggs. So there was only one left. He threw it as carefully as he could. Splat. It broke. He looked at the money. He knew he'd lost. His head was down. He shuffled out of the house. He went back to his little hut where his wife was. Well, the slave master was all excited. I did it! I'm the first one to beat Betcha John! And he ran out of the house and he started telling everybody, I beat Betcha John. No one's ever done it before. I did it. I'm the best. And he started bragging. And Betcha John and his wife started laughing. They were laughing for a long time. And then Betcha John took a long walk far away to a plantation. And when he came back, he had $50. Where did he get it? Go ahead, confer, collaborate. Anybody got it? Anybody think they know the answer? I'll give you a hint. He had another bet. He had another bet, didn't he? What was the other bet? What was the other bet? You want to answer? Go ahead. He bet that he would lose. Okay, that's a good idea, but not the answer. No. He made a bet at the other plantation that what? That he could throw eggs all over the slave master's house?
Without making me
Without what?
Without making him angry.
Without getting in trouble. Yeah. He bet that he could throw eggs all over the master's mantelpiece without making him mad or without getting in trouble. You understand?
Yeah.
Could I throw eggs all over your teacher's desk without getting in trouble? I bet you I can. I bet you I can. You want to bet? So that's based on a true story. It's something that actually happened. And Bet you John won his freedom. He was able to buy his own freedom and leave. And because that slave master was an evil person, so he lost the bet. All right. So that's enough of those kind of stories. We're going to move on to, I'd like to tell you a true story. Actually, the first part of the story is not true. The second part is. The first part of the story is a literature-based story that is from a book that a man named Jean Giono wrote in the 1950s in France. And when he wrote this book, it became very popular. It wasn't very long. It's only 4,000 words. And he shared it with magazines. He shared it with other people. He said, take my story. Do whatever you want with it. I don't want any money, nothing. Just do whatever you want with this story. Just spread it around the world. And people love this story. And so they would make books with pictures and sell them and publish them. And the book traveled all over the world. And the book is called The Man Who Planted Trees. I'm going to tell you an adapted version of it, and then I'll tell you the true part afterwards. There was a journalist walking through France a long time ago. And everywhere he looked, there was nothing he saw but destruction and desolation. All the trees had been cut down and burned. All the houses were broken and falling apart. There were no people living there anymore. There were no flowers. The rivers were all dried up. There was no water. Just desolation. And as he walked, he looked up on a hill and he saw a shepherd. And he walked up to the shepherd and he saw that he was poking holes in the ground with his staff and taking acorns out of a pouch and dropping them in the holes. And he said to the shepherd, what are you doing? He said, I'm planting trees. How many trees? Said the journalist. He said, I'm planting 100 trees every day. The forest is gone and I want to bring it back. The journalist was surprised at this. And he said goodbye and walked away. 10 years later, the journalist walked down that same road and he was surprised to see lots of small trees everywhere. As far as the eye could see, there were lots and lots and lots of them. And there was a little bit of water in one of the creeks, and a few people had moved back into the town and were fixing up a house. And he found the shepherd again, up on top of the hill. And he saw him and he said, what are you doing? He says, I'm planting trees. And sure enough, he was planting 100 trees every day. He even had a nursery where he kept baby nut trees and fruit trees that he spread amongst the other trees in the forest. The journalist was amazed. And he traveled onward. 10 years later, he came back again. And this time there was a forest. Huge amounts of trees, thousands and thousands of trees, as far as the eye could see. The government had to come in and manage the trees because people were camping out in the forest. Lots of animals were living in the forest. The rivers had water in them again. There were children playing in the town for all the houses had been fixed up. And what had once been destruction and desolation was now beautiful. All because one man planted trees. And that's the story. Now right here in Colombia, there's a man named Paulo Lugari. And about 40 years ago, he went out into the llanos and he saw all this grass. And he thought, what if I started planting trees there? So he had some friends and they all went out there and they started planting trees. And now there's a rainforest out there. Millions of trees. Monkeys live there. The rivers have water in them again. And it's a beautiful place, and it's a village that people have made. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Las Gaviotas. Have you heard of that? Somebody has? A couple of people have? It's famous all over the world. When I told people I was coming to Colombia to tell stories, they say, oh, you have to go to Las Gaviotas. I said, well, I can't go there this time, but maybe another time. But it's famous because what he's done is created an example of what people can do on the earth today to create a sustainable village. So they've made solar electric, solar water heaters. They have a pump made out of a children's toy called a seesaw where the children go up and down. And they pump water with that while they're playing. And they've done all these amazing things, including a solar refrigerator. Okay? And so they make their own electricity, they heat their own water, and they grow their own food. And they're creating an example for the rest of the world. People write books about this. So we all found out about it through books and the internet about what he's doing. It's an amazing thing. So Maybe someday your teacher will ask you to do a report, and you'll do a report about it, so you can learn more. So that's the story about one man who planted trees and another man who planted trees. The end. I brought some things to show you. I grew up in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. And the mountains there are very small. They're nothing like the Andes. They've been worn down by snow and rain for millions of years. So they're kind of low mountains, but they're beautiful mountains. And the people that live there call them the Appalachian Mountains. And in 1700, a lot of people had moved there from many countries all over Europe. Spain, France, England, Ireland, Scotland, Sweden. And when they moved to those mountains, they invented an instrument, a musical instrument. This is it. It's called the Appalachian dulcimer. Sometimes it's called a mountain dulcimer, and its third name is a lap dulcimer because when you play it, you hold it in your lap. Traditionally, it was played with a feather, either a goose feather or a turkey feather, and a stick. And the stick's called a noter. And the kind of music that people play with these is called bluegrass music or folk music. And it's kind of a people's music. You don't hear it much on the radio or on television, but lots of people play it. So I'm going to play a song for you called The Wildwood Flower. It's a pretty song. Play nice songs, and they also play fast songs in this bluegrass music, and they take turns playing the melody. So in a jam, there might be a guitar player, a fiddle player, a mandolin player, a banjo player, a bass player, and a dulcimer player. And they'll take turns playing the melody. So I'm going to play a faster song now for you called Old Joe Clark. It's one of the most famous bluegrass songs of all. People come to these jams and they don't bring an instrument and they want to sing the words. So they get a turn every once in a while to sing some of the words, and they like to make up humorous lyrics for these songs. And this one goes like this. Old Joe Clark, he had a house 15 stories high. Every story in that house was filled with chicken pie. I went to visit old Joe Clark, he invited me to supper. I stubbed my toe on the table leg and stuck my nose in the butter. Fare thee well, old Joe Clark, fare thee well, I say. Fare thee well, old Joe Clark, time to go away. So people just take turns singing these songs, and they're fun songs. But it's people's music. It's not famous on the radio, though there are some people who are very famous that play it. It's generally just the people's music. Now in that music, there's no drummer. Instead, they use a little rhythm instrument that's very famous all over the world. It's got lots of different names. Some people call him Dancing Dan, other people call him Jumpin' Johnny. The French call him a jig-doll, and the Irish call him a jig-doll. But in the United States, in the Appalachian Mountains, they call him a limberjack. You know that word, limber? It means flexible, loose and limber. The opposite of limber is stiff, okay? So they use it in the rhythm of the song. Do a little trick for you. Come on, little limberjack, do a split for us. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3. Whoop, almost. 1, 2, 3. Almost again. 1, 2, 3. Come on, you've done it before. It's just with one video camera. No? All right, one more try. I'm going to loosen up the board here. Come on, do the splits. This is very disappointing. There it is. When I was a little boy, I didn't see one of these. When I got a little bit older, I did. And I I said to the person, "Oh, I really like that. Where can I buy one of those?" And he said, "You can't buy these at stores. They don't sell them in a store." I said, "Well, how am I going to get one?" He said, "You're going to have to learn how to make it." I said, "Well, how do I do that?" He said, "Well, there's a book that'll show you how to do it." So I got that book and I learned how to make them. There he is, the lumberjack. All right. I brought something else to show you. About 150 years ago, there were some sailors in a country called Portugal. And they sailed around the world with little guitars. Their guitars were called machetes, and this part was shaped like a fish. And the first place they stopped after they left Portugal was Brazil. Then they sailed around South America, out into the Pacific Ocean, to a place called the Sandwich Islands. You like sandwiches? Yeah. Well, the Sandwich Islands at that time were named after a famous person called the Earl of Sandwich. He was an Englishman that had been the first person to think about taking 2 pieces of bread, putting some meat in the middle, and closing it up. So they named it after him. And they named those islands after him because he was pretty famous. Well, the people there didn't like the name of that island because they were indigenous to that island. They were Polynesian people. They had their own name for it. But they let the English play with that for a while. One day, the Portuguese sailors arrived there, and they couldn't speak that language with the Polynesian people. And they knew that music is a universal language, so they played a song for them. And they saw the fingers jumping around on the strings, and the people said, "Ukulele." Ukulele? The sailors wanted to know, what does that mean? And they found out what it meant. It meant jumping fleas, because the fleas that jump around the beach in that place look just like those fingers jumping around. So they started calling these little guitars ukulele. And then they gave that place its true name, Hawaii. So this is an ukulele from Hawaii. They're very popular now, all over the world. People love ukuleles, or ukulele as some people say. So I would like to sing you a little story. Has anybody ever sung you a story? You've had storytellers here before. Has anyone ever sung you a story? Never? I would be glad to be the first. I know an old lady, she swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a spider, and it wiggled and jiggled and tiggled inside her. She swallowed a spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a bird. That's absurd. You can't swallow a bird. She swallowed the bird to catch the spider that wiggled and jiggled and tiggled inside her. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a cat. Imagine that, a whole furry cat. She swallowed the cat to catch the bird. She swallowed the bird to catch the spider that wiggled and jiggled and tiggled inside her. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a dog. What a hog, a whole dog. And it wasn't a hot dog either. She swallowed the dog to catch the cat. She swallowed the cat to catch the bird. She swallowed the bird to catch the spider that wiggled and jiggled and tiggled inside her. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a goat. She opened up her throat and swallowed a goat. Horns and everything. She swallowed the goat to catch the dog. She swallowed the dog to catch the cat. She swallowed the cat to catch the bird. She swallowed the bird to catch the spider that wiggled and jiggled and tiggled inside her. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a cow. Don't ask me how, but she did it. She swallowed a cow. She swallowed the cow to catch the goat. She swallowed the goat to catch the dog. She swallowed the dog to catch the cat. She swallowed swallowed the spider to catch the fly. Will you say it with me? I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. I know an old lady, she swallowed a horse. She's dead, of course. There's a very funny man that I have known about my whole life. He was a poet and a songwriter. Very funny. He made up funny poems and funny songs. His name was Shel Silverstein. And he wrote up some of the funniest stuff ever. And one of the neatest things he did was he made up a song that describes what it would be like to be eaten by a boa constrictor. I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor. A boa constrictor. A boa constrictor. I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor. I don't like it one bit. What do you know? He's nibbling my toe. Oh gee, he's up to my knee. I don't know why, he's up to my thigh. Oh fiddle, he's up to my middle. Oh heck, he's up to my neck. Oh dread, he's up to... That's the song. He's a very funny man. We'll do something else of his in a little while. I brought something else to show you. All over the world, people make whistles. You probably read this little sign. I've been collecting whistles for well over 30 years. And I keep finding very interesting ones, and I put them on my necklace here so I can show you. More like a bandolero now. So all over the world, people make whistles out of different things and for different reasons. This one was made in Hawaii by some children. They took a nut from a tree called the konani tree, poked a hole in it, cleaned out the nut meat, and then blew into it, and they had a whistle. Now over in India, there's some people called the Hindu people, and they have a sacred cow. And this whistle is made out of the horn of that cow. This whistle comes from Tanzania. Does anybody know where that is? Africa. It's made out of a little stick. It's good for getting people clapping their hands or drumming. The next whistle comes from Alaska. It was made by people that are often called Eskimos. Though they don't call themselves Eskimos, they know themselves as the Inuit people. And they have kayaks and they go out in the water hunting for fish or seals, and sometimes they get caught in the fog and they can't find their way home. And so they make a little whistle out of a tusk of a walrus, and they blow their whistle when there's fog, and somebody on the shore blows their whistle, and that's how they find their way home. This next whistle was made in Japan, and it's made out of a stone called soapstone. It's soft enough to carve. And it's called a two-fish whistle or a good luck whistle. And they believe there, if you catch two fish and you give one to your neighbor, you'll have good luck. So they have a good luck whistle. And now these next two whistles come from where I live in the Northwest. This whistle was made by a tribe of Indians called the Umatilla tribe. They live along the river called the Columbia River. And this one's made out of a turkey bone. This other whistle is made by the coastal tribes, the Tulalip tribe, and different tribes make these out of cedar, which is a very famous tree up there. Now, a long time ago in the theater, people created illusions for the audiences. They'd be doing a play and talking about this is happening and that's happening, and someone would say, it's getting very windy, and you hear this sound. That's called a sound effect whistle. Now, in the United States, there's a funny little store called the 7-Eleven. People make these whistles as an advertising whistle out of plastic. It's called the Oscar Mayer weenie whistle. I'm not going to play the whole song for you. Now, over in New Zealand, the Maori tribe makes a whistle out of a precious stone called jade, and they use this to signal each other. Soldiers, I almost missed one here. Soldiers made a whistle in the 1700s out of wood, and they use it to signal each other to tell them their enemies were coming. Now whalers, people that hunt whales in the 17 and 1800s, would use parts of the whale to make things, including a whistle out of whale bone. Now there's a whole group of whistles here, all made of metal, that all come from the same country, Great Britain. You'll probably recognize some of these. And there's another little whistle called a trolley whistle. And then there's a fireman's siren. The policemen in Great Britain are called bobbies, and this is a bobby whistle. And then there's a school teacher's whistle. You've probably heard this before. Or a coach's whistle. All right, back to class. There's a person called a nanny. They take care of people's children. And they get the nanny whistle, and it has a little rattle on it to entertain the babies, and something for the baby to chew on. And sometimes the nanny needs help, so she uses this whistle to get her dog to come. It's very high-pitched. Now this is a scout whistle. Boy Scouts have these, and Girl Scouts have them. Whenever they go to the forest, they always take a whistle. Do you know why? In case you get lost. The sound of a whistle travels very far. Now this is a very special whistle. It has 3 different sounds. It's called a shepherd's whistle. A shepherd has a flock of sheep, and he has a sheepdog. And they use the shepherd's whistle to command the sheepdog to do things. So it has 3 sounds. That sound tells the sheepdog to go get the sheep. And they run out and start gathering the sheep up. The second sound tells the sheepdog to hold the sheep in one place. And the last sound tells the sheepdog to bring the sheep back to the fold. Now on trains, the engineer, of course, has that whistle that goes doo, doo, but he also has another whistle that he wears around his neck that he uses to signal the conductor or the fireman, so it's called a double whistle. Each whistle's for a different signal. Now on ships, there's a sailor called a bosun. There's a captain, he gives the orders to the first mate. The first mate gives the order to the bosun, and the bosun gives the orders to the sailors by using this whistle called the bosun's pipe. Now the captain has a whistle too. It's called a sounder's horn. When the sailors go ashore and he wants them to come back with the wood, water, or food, he blows his horn. You can hear that really far away. All right, those are the ones from Great Britain. Now we're getting to the musical whistles. This first one comes from a place called Czechoslovakia, and it's called a pitch pipe. It's a music teacher's whistle. It's used to get everybody to hum the same sound. I didn't hear anybody hum. I'll try a little higher. Hold on. That was probably too low. Very good. Let's go a little bit higher. Good. So the next whistle is the smallest harmonica in the world. It's from Germany. And when I first got this whistle, I thought, I better not just put this in my mouth. I might swallow it. It sound like a harmonica. So I hooked it onto my necklace, and that's kind of how I got started tying all these whistles onto the strings. That's the harmonica. Now, from right here in Latin America, people have been making a kind of whistle for thousands of years called an ocarina. Anybody have an ocarina? No? Usually they're made out of clay. Occasionally they're made out of wood or stone. This is a wooden one, and it has 4 holes in the top, 2 in the bottom, and you can get quite a few notes with this. Now, somehow, this whistle, this idea of ocarina, traveled all the way around the world, and it made it to a place in Asia called Nepal. In Nepal, they make a whistle out of bronze, and they call it an ocarina. Instead of an ocarina, an ocarina. So, you probably have a name for this whistle. I call it a panpipe because Peter Pan had one. Now the strangest of all my whistles comes from Brazil. It was made by a tribe somewhere out in the jungle. It's called a nose whistle. It's called a nose whistle because you play it with your nose. This is another whistle from Brazil called a samba whistle. You know about samba music, right? Well, the band leader of the samba band has a whistle and he does this. All right, now over in Africa, some people wanted to make a flute, so So they took a stick and they carved it, and they took a smaller stick and caught it on fire and burned a hole down the middle, but not all the way. Then they burned a small hole in the bottom and one on each side, and they turned a little stick into a flute. All right. Now in the United States, they invented kind of a silly whistle. It's called a kazoo. It can be made of metal or plastic. This one's made of wood. And when you blow on a whistle and a kazoo, you know what you get? Nothing. You have to talk to it. Here's what you say. Doot, 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 doot. Then you can play any song you like. Hey, Macarena. Now, also from the United States is this whistle called the slide whistle, but I'm sure you've heard in cartoons. What a lot of people don't know is you can play songs on it. All right, those are the musical whistles. Now we're getting to the animal whistles. This first one is a dog whistle. Only dogs can hear this, but some people can too. And when they do, they bark. Good sense of humor. Now this next whistle also came from Brazil. It's called a cricket whistle. It sounds like all those crickets right outside your house. Does anybody have crickets outside their house? No. Now this is an alligator whistle made out of a real alligator's tooth from a place called Louisiana. And this is an eagle whistle made out of an antler from a deer made by Native Americans, and it sounds like an eagle way up high. And this next whistle is an owl whistle from China made out of bamboo. And this next whistle is called a cuckoo whistle, and it's from Haydn's Toy Symphony. This next whistle is called a crow whistle. It's from Anywhere. Do you know where that is? No? Never heard Anywhere? How about Somewhere? Everywhere? Crows live just about everywhere. Now there's another bird that lives here in South America as well, in North America. It's called a quail. There's probably a different name for it here. If you want to make friends with a quail, you make this sound. Now this next whistle is a wooden whistle called a Canada goose whistle. It's from Canada. Now I have this little tiny whistle. It's a Chinese bird watcher's whistle. The Chinese like to go out in the forest and look at their birds, and sometimes you don't see any birds. And so the birds are all hiding, and you use this whistle to make them chirp. It's a bird distress call. And the last one on my necklace is this whistle from Switzerland. It's a bird whistle. It's made out of a branch of a tree. And when you press the feathers down, it makes the bird's mouth open and shut, but it also changes the note. Now I have two more whistles. This one is a Chinese water whistle called the nightingale whistle. The nightingale is a little plain colored bird that sings a beautiful song. Now I have one more whistle that's made out of the largest seed in the world. What is the largest seed in the world? It comes from a tree. Special kind of tree. Not a pine cone. Come on, somebody can get this. You eat what's inside it. Coconut. This came from New Guinea. It's a coconut. I have one more whistle that I found on my trip here to Colombia in Cali, and it's a whistle that's made out of the algarrobo tree. It's a pod from the tree, and I'm not very good at playing it, but I'm going to try it anyway. So there it is. That's my new one. I'll tie it on here someday. So those are all the whistles. have bad news for you. Our time is up. Thank you very much. Tell those stories. Tell them. Don't forget